Prayer Before Dawn, which is based on the true story of Billy Moore, about whom I didn't know before I saw the film, and stars Joe Cole in a role that was apparently at one point earmarked for Charlie Humdrum. Joe Cole's been in things like, he's had small roles in movies like Green Room Falling, and he's really, really good. And I absolutely can't, you know, sometimes you see a film and the person who is cast in the lead role is absolutely perfect, and then you discover that actually there was somebody else in that role, and you think, what? How could that film possibly have existed with that other person? Well, that's kind of like it, because in this particular case, Joe Cole is so good and so central. So the story is, we first meet him, he plays Billy. He's preparing for a fight. There are no words. Again, this is something that I refer to all the time. I like films which do their exposition through action, through gesture, through motion, rather than somebody saying, "Here I am, and I am preparing to do a football," whatever it is. So there's the ritual of him, getting his hands bandaged up, getting his body greased up, and then he goes into the ring where he is, beaten, but he savages his opponent, and he takes drugs, and he's got kind of, there is this internal rage, and when he's in the ring, he's like a kind of feral creature. Next thing, his flat is raided, and he's sent to this notorious prison in Bangkok, where he stands out amongst the inmates, the rest of whom are sort of, covered in tattoos. And one of the things the film does, there's very little dialogue, but what there is there's there's very little English language dialogue. There is an awful lot of non-English language dialogue, but it's not subtitled. And so the way it works for an English-speaking audience is that you only understand as much as the character understands. So when he goes into the prison, he's being spoken to, but he doesn't understand the language that he's being spoken to. But what happens is you understand enough. You understand enough from what's happening, because so much of it is to do with gesture, so much of it is to do with the way that everything is worked physically. And it's initially he's in some kind of utter hellhole, and his situation seems precarious. He has to sort of to fight to find his space, and slowly over the course of the movie, he demonstrates that he's a fighter, that he's somebody who does boxing, kickboxing, and mixed martial arts, all those things. And this then becomes the commodity that will potentially save him. The film is directed by Jean-Stéphane, who directed a movie that, I don't know whether you remember when we reviewed this, called Johnny Mad Dog, which is a film about African child soldiers, which is a really, really extraordinary piece of work. I mean, incredibly alarming and worrying film, made, I think, with really good intentions, and very, very well directed, but really, really upsetting. And what he's done here is he's made a sort of experiential film that basically puts you inside the experience of its central character, and you see the world through their eyes, and it's all very, very intense. An awful lot of it is to do with the sound design. It has the most incredible sound design. When you're in a film when the sound is sort of engulfing you like a wet towel or something, and you almost feel like you're suffocating because of the noise. Well, it's like that. I know it's never true to say a film makes you feel like you're in a prison, in the same way that I remember seeing a veteran who was commenting on Saving Private Ryan, and somebody said, well, is it like being... Oh, no, it was in the Sam Fuller documentary. Sam Fuller somebody said, oh, you made a film, and it's just like being in a war. He said, no, it's not like being in a war unless somebody is in the aisles sniping at you. So, of course, it's not. It's a film. But whilst you're watching it, the experience of being inside this character's violent world, inside this character's oppressive world, is really, really intense. You can feel the heat. You can feel the clamminess of the bodies. You can feel the rage of the central character. So and I came out afterwards, and a friend of mine, a colleague, said, I'm not entirely sure what the point of the story was. And I think for me, that was missing the point. The point was that it is the experience of, as a piece of experiential cinema, it's really, really sort of overpowering. And the fight sequences, people talk about the fight sequences in Raging Bull being realistic. And for people who said this is like Raging Bull meets Midnight Express, I can understand where that comparison came from. The fight scenes are, they are brutal, and they are really tough, and you really feel like you're in the middle of that environment. It's a very strong piece of work.